Hello everyone, and thank you all for joining us again here today on Hastings County for another SRD video. We are going to be taking a look at today this one called Levoid's D8 RPG system. This one's a short, sweet one, so this will be a pretty short video. But in any case, thank you all for joining us. Just as a reminder, if this is your first SRD video, SRDs are system reference documents. These are documents that are used by creators like you and me to create TTRPGs. So let's go ahead and take a look at this one. So the basics of this system. One, it is definitely modular. There's lots of simple basics here that can definitely be built on or have extra systems sort of built around it. And there are definitely elements that you could potentially borrow from other systems that would bolt on pretty well onto this one. Second, the results are based on the use of a single 8-sided die. So it is simple in that there is minimal math, and also you don't have to utilize lots of different dice. Finally, it is basic, as I mentioned, versatile, and narrative-focused in its character creation. First, let's go ahead and take a look at action resolution in this system. Again, it is pretty simple. You just roll a single D8, and then you add or subtract any bonuses and see the table for results. As you can see on the table, about half of our options are either a failure but or success but. So basically, we have some sort of mixed success or failure there. We have about a 12.5% for straight failures or straight successes, and then we have a failure and or a success and on the top or the bottom. You'll note that if you add or subtract any bonuses, then you're going to be moving the scale up or down, which will make some of the options on the top or the bottom potentially impossible if you're utilizing that single D8. Taking a look at character creation in this D8 system, again, it's pretty basic and very narrative focused. Characters, when created, are each given 3 attributes by the player. These can be invoked during a scene in order to add a +1 bonus to any rolls where that particular attribute might apply. Now, what's important is even though we're using the term attribute here, we're not referring to like strength, dexterity, or any of that stuff. Instead, what we're referring to are things like traits, professions, a character's heritage, like cultural aspects, some form of education, past experience that is giving this character a bonus in a particular area. So for example, maybe your character is a monkey, right? So things that might apply to a monkey would that a monkey would be better at doing, like climbing a tree, would obviously give you a bonus. Or admittedly, that's a somewhat crude example, but you get the basic idea. It could be you're a teacher and therefore you're better at educating people or keeping your temper in check whenever you're having to deal with lots of questions. Or you're good at thinking on your feet. Maybe you have a heritage that connects you to a particular culture or people, and therefore, as a result, you have more experience with creating art that's associated with that culture, or knowledge when it comes to certain practices that culture or the history of that culture. So anything like that. Now, there is an option to also potentially have what the creator referred to as sub-attributes. So these would be more focused elements. So again, going back to that idea of, oh, my character is a monkey, right? And so that is one of my character's attributes. Maybe the sub-attribute could be climber, which would then give you a +2 bonus instead of just 1 if both of the items potentially apply. So in many ways, these are pretty similar to like the types of character aspects that you might see in a fate-based game. In that particular system, the aspects aren't solely associated with a character. They are associated with pretty much anything. So you could have aspects that are situational because of the current scenario that's going on, or that are inherently in the environment of the scene, or that might be associated with an NPC or like a major faction that might be involved in the scene or stuff like that. But these are essentially character aspects. Now, some other things that are generally tracked in-game by using this system are things that could also provide bonuses or penalties. Among these are items. So, of course, you could, use an item. that to give you an advantage or disadvantage in a particular situation. So, for example, maybe I have an item that essentially is an artifact associated with a particular culture, and therefore me having it or using it in certain situations makes it more likely for me to have success because of maybe some capabilities it has, or an association that other people around me would have with it that would make my attempt to, for example, do a particular ritual more successful. Another thing that is typically tracked in this system are injuries and types of injuries. So the reason why we want to track certain types of injuries is because the SRD expresses that there might be certain cures that we need to repair certain types of injuries, or some things could only be really repaired with time. So, for example, burns would probably require specialized treatment, or obviously like something significant like a broken bone or something is obviously going to need not only special treatment but also time in order to heal. Attacks in the game may potentially inflict more than one level of injury. And the impression that I got from reading the SRD, which, by the way, it's short, it's only 2 pages, is that basically NPCs and PCs are rolling. So it's not just players who are rolling. The game master, if you're using one, would also be rolling in this type of a system. If you're utilizing this system in facilitated play, this type of system is definitely loose enough and narrative enough that you could definitely do it as sort of like a group play where everybody's kind of working together, as opposed to having to rely on a facilitator. And of course, this is a system that would be completely open to being the core of a solo system if you added some extra layers to it. Finally, the system recommends and suggests that if a character experiences up to 5 levels of an injury, then that probably should equal death or some form of incapacitation. With injuries, with attacks potentially inflicting more than 1 level of injury, so it could be 1 or 2, so your character could get knocked out pretty quick. Especially if you also decide to play in that injuries can potentially create certain types of penalties. And that's actually it when it comes to the SRD. As I mentioned, it's only really 2 pages long. As we mentioned, a very simple system. However, I did want to actually expand on this a little bit more, and partly because I'm not necessarily a super big fan of this system for 1 or 2 reasons, and I'm going to elaborate on those here in just a second. So just some things that I would probably do a little bit differently if I were to utilize this system or something very similar to it. The first would be I would probably make it really clear in any game I based on this basic engine is that the bonuses and penalties can also come from things other than the character. It's not that clear in the SRD. So basically I would take the aspect of the attributes that does seem to be similar to Fate aspects and expand that to include items from outside the players and player characters and or NPCs, and integrating other elements as well. Another thing that I would probably change, or at least experiment with, is instead of using those straight bonuses, I would probably apply advantage and disadvantage dice. So for example, if I had one of those sub-attributes that was applying to a roll, instead of rolling 1d8 and adding 2, what I would do is I would roll 3d8 and keep the highest, or at least keep 1, whichever one I wanted. Presumably that would be the highest though. Now, the question is, why would you want to do this? Well, there's 2 reasons. On each of these charts, the one on the left is the one where you're just basically adding to the d8. I'm only going in one direction because obviously if you're subtracting, then the bars would just move in the opposite direction. Meanwhile, on the right, you have the rolling keep system, basically, that I'm suggesting. Again, as I mentioned, you're rolling 1 dice, 2 dice, or 3 dice, and then just keeping whichever one is highest. So the first thing you'll see is that there on the bottom of the rolling keep set, that the failure and, even though we're adding bonuses, does not completely go away. It's really hard to see, but even the failure and for the 3d8 keep 1 is not 100% gone. There's still a little bit of it left there. So there's still at least a chance, albeit not a very good one. Sometimes weird things can happen to the most prepared and skilled people that will end up with them not having things work out exactly the way they wanted them to. The other thing is it makes the changes that you can see in the different options a lot less linear. So, for example, if you take a look at the chart on the left, we're literally just sliding everything down and expanding that success and option. So that success and option in the first slot is got 12.5, and then it's expanding to 25, and then it's expanding to 37.5, just linearly, right? And all of the other options, all of the other success options, so the just regular success and the success but option are not changing sizes. The odds of those things changing are still staying at 12.5 and 25, no matter how many bonuses I'm throwing at this. It feels like it's increasing the chance of that success and option a lot, to the point where it feels a little ridiculous. So that's why I generally prefer the roll and keep, because it makes the changes smoother, in that we're making certain options bigger or smaller. We're not completely removing them or making them bigger in like large steps. Now, one disadvantage I see in this is that when we have that 3D8 keep 1, is that we are admittedly increasing the overall chance of a potential success more than we would if we were using the other one. So you'll see like the row furthest to the right on the rolling and just adding a straight bonus, that our chance of any type of success is basically 75%. While our chance of any type of success on the 3D8 keep 1, which is basically the equivalent option, that's obviously more than 75%. Maybe a little bit more than I would prefer, but this still feels better to me, just because, again, we're scaling the chances. So the chance of a success, but at least in comparison to each other, is still staying roughly about the same. That's probably it's some modifications that I would probably do to this engine if I were to ever use it. In any case, again, that was Levoid's D8 RPG system. This was posted by Lev Working onto itch.io. You can find links to it in the description down below. Definitely, take a look at it, especially if you're just throwing together a game real quick and you just want an engine that could potentially run something. I definitely recommend it as an option. And it's also obviously something that you can definitely play around with a lot. Again, D8, it's a generally underutilized die, but it still has a good amount of potential when it comes to utilizing it in sort of randomized systems like this. It's very simple when it comes to the math and stuff, and so you would definitely be able to utilize it pretty simply. Definitely check it out. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and all of that jazz if you want to check out more. In the end card of the video, there'll be a link to the playlist of all of the different SRD videos we've created on the channel so far, in addition to a place where you can subscribe, and of course your recommended video of whatever Google or YouTube or whatever we're on for things you might want to watch next. And yeah, don't forget to rate your purchases and have a good zone.